the behavior and misbehavior of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for some time now, that about 3 years ago, they started to get heat from their members about their anti-climate position. They were top climate obstructors under the influence map analysis that was done, along with the National Association of Manufacturers. That did not go well with some of their members. So what they have done is they've taken those members and they've put them in a little corral where they have a climate conversation with them, a climate conversation from which no action ever emerges. And what's interesting to see is anything good that the Chamber is asked to do on climate goes into that climate conversation where it comes to a halt and dies. But attacking this rule, that didn't go into that climate conversation. That went straight into Chamber operations. And I think it's high time that the big companies that have been either fooled or willfully blind about where they've been stuck in this little Chamber climate conversation started to revive their energy about what the Chamber is really up to. Anything good on climate the Chamber is asked to do goes and dies in the climate conversation. Anything evil the Chamber is asked to do on climate change goes straight into operations without even a bounce in the climate conversation. And the fact that there are two tracks, depending on whether it's anti-climate or pro-climate, and the pro-climate is a box canyon dead end, and the anti-climate uses all the power and all the might of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is by a factor of 3 the biggest lobbying organization in the country, tells a lot about the sincerity of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on climate stuff. So to that end, one of the things that we have pushed is that as part of disclosures, companies should not only disclose their carbon footprint, but they should disclose their carbon political footprint. And it shouldn't be too hard to audit that if the company discloses to the auditors what they're doing. You can readily determine the climate positions of members of Congress they support. You can readily determine the climate positions of trade associations and lobby groups they support. And if they were being candid, they would disclose their dark money contributions, and you could readily determine where the dark money went with respect to climate policy. And I think what you would find from that, and I think the reason that we can't find it out, is that for CEOs, they would have to report to their shareholders that what they had told them and what they told the public was very different from what they were letting their trade associations and lobby groups tell us here in Congress. And Senator Markey and I see this day in and day out. So in addition to the problem of the Chamber having 2 roads, corporate America as a general proposition has 2 roads. And we, unfortunately, in Congress, listen to the big trade associations and the big lobby groups because they're the ones who come here through thick, through thin, participate in campaigns, lobby consistently. A CEO can make a statement in Manhattan, and it will have about the effect of a raindrop. But when that CEO's industry trade association comes here to put their footprint on Congress, it has a much more powerful effect. And the discrepancy between what CEOs are saying and what their trade associations and lobby groups are doing, I think, is a reputational risk exposure for those companies. So it's not just a question of trying to get them to do the right thing. It's a question of shareholders need to know if their company management is playing this game. That's a long way of getting to the question of, is it a reputational risk for companies if their company management is playing the game of telling shareholders and consumers one thing about their climate position and deploying trade association artillery in Congress that takes the exact opposite position?
Absolutely, Senator, and welcome, Senator Brown. And as Senator Whitehouse knows, I mean, Ceres works with companies all over that come to Capitol Hill on this issue, and it is. We actually produced a report called Responsible Policy Engagement that looked at the top 100 companies and found that 80 of them say they have a climate plan, 20 of them are lobbying against it, 40 of them don't take any position in Congress.
Except through their trade associations.
Except through the trade association.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. It's an enormous issue, Senator.
Great. Great. I'll leave it to that. Senator Brown is here. He's the
Okay.
chairman of the
Yeah,
banking
well,
committee. I don't want
think
to,
you have
anybody else
anything
wants
you
to
wanna
answer
say?
quickly, of course, but
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Going to add from the business perspective, if you were to abdicate your responsibility for part of your business and tell your board or your shareholders, we let somebody else control that, you'd be out of a job very quickly.
Right.
But but that is exactly what they're doing to their political voice. And it is not naively done. And it is done with very significant consequences. And as you point out, Senator Whitehouse, very significant risks.
Yeah,
to the company and to the shareholders.
Exactly.
yeah, and I'm going to recognize Senator Brown, but I want you to be thinking about what's the simplest way you can explain Scope 3? Put it into English, why it's so important. Now, I'll come back later, but just have that, cogitate on that so that we can translate it into, the escape hatch, which many of these huge corporations are going to try to find. So let me recognize